I'm. Let me know if you guys can see my presentation.
It's coming up. Yes, Streaming Dataflows is there.
Fantastic. So yeah, today I want to go through a couple scenarios. The key being we're gonna go through real time in Power BI. We're gonna understand what exists today in Power BI. Then I'm gonna introduce this new thing we call streaming data flows. What is it? What is the ideal scenarios that we envision for it? Those sort of things. I'll then go through a quick demo of the product where we'll go through a sample use case, look at building a streaming data flow, look at a report that consumes one, the kind of scenarios that can enable. And then we look at roadmap and next steps. So what's happening both from a product perspective and then how you can also leverage this today. We are in public preview, so if you do have premium capacity, this is something you should definitely be able to tap into. And going from that, then, a question I get often is, why real time? Why are we looking at real time today? What's going on in that front? And there's two really interesting stats that stand out that can help make that case a little more. The first is that in the next 5 years, nearly 30% of the so-called global data sphere is presumed to be real-time information. Simultaneously, around the same time, it's also estimated that this is going to grow to be a $30 billion market. And so we see that there's going to be a lot of opportunities for leveraging Power BI to enable a lot of real-time scenarios. There's a lot of green spaces there, and there's a lot of ways that we can add value to that space, which is why we're looking more into it, trying to get in early, understand scenarios, understand how we can help our customers, those sort of things. Moving from that, then, I think a great question is, what are envisioned real-time scenarios today? What accounts for one? And what should we look at when we think about real time, right? The first one is something I'm sure a lot of us are aware of, real-time fraud detection. I think I'm sure a couple of us have had those texts from the bank checking, hey, was this really you? And what's happening under the hood is there's millions or billions of transactions happening every second. And there's a time cost involved to being late on a decision, like, hey, was this transaction fraudulent? A couple seconds too late, it might get processed, and then you're walking. And so there's an implicit cost essentially to that decision. So you're really looking at scenarios where there's a cost to a delay or cost to like the time taken to make a decision. And that's where real time is pretty important. Another interesting one is the idea of fleet management. Where in the network is the car currently? Where, or not even car, like trucks? How long are they gonna take to reach their destination? Perhaps you're also looking at factories, and especially in scenarios where you need to maintain temperatures. For example, you could be working, in like with pipelines, and they need to be at a certain temperature. If it gets too cold, they freeze. You have issues. And so you need to have these these operations and maintenance teams that have to monitor them. A lot of them typically do this remotely. And so how do you create tools that enable them to make decisions in real time, down to every second almost, when they're looking at these, when they're maintaining thousands of these facilities? And so again, that's a really interesting space. Another one that we're looking at is the idea of customer behavior in stores. How can you leverage through using real-time information? You can sort of enable a lot of scenarios for customers, right? And this actually leads me really well into the IoT scenario for real-time, something we're hearing a lot about from our customers. The first one might be something like phone tracking. So let's say you walk into a store, and can you contextually show a coupon to the individual at that time, to that one creates value for the customer, and two allows the business to tap in and convert potential customers into real customers. Another one that's really interesting is social media. So the idea, like Twitter has a treasure trove of information, a lot of that updating dynamically every second or millisecond. the marketing scenario becomes really interesting here, where you can go from, hey, we have a product that's launching and we need to wait a couple weeks to gather customer feedback, to, hey, we have a product that's launching, and in real time, we can monitor how people are consuming this product or reacting to it, what they think about it, and what are possibly key things we need to go address over the next 2-3 weeks to either alleviate customer concerns or or like tap into these potential scenarios that customers are envisioning. So it's really empowering in that scenario as well. Another one that I'm sure a lot of us have come across is ride sharing. Today, if you have, you have to call a car using any of the ride sharing apps that exist. Behind the scenes, the company needs to get your location, figure out driver locations, possibly in that moment, there's surge pricing going on. What's happening behind the scenes is there's an operations team that's potentially like trying to incentivize drivers onto the system. So again, like there's so many situations where real-time data can just make such a huge difference and enable a lot of like data-driven decision making, which is really exciting, especially within using Power BI for that. And so we go from what real time looks like to essentially what exists today for real time. And there's two things that exist today in real time: streaming datasets and push datasets. And they both target two different cases, as we will see. So with streaming, what's really happening under the hood is your focus is on how can I get this data to me as fast as possible to make real-time decisions. But you're sacrificing long-term retention of that data for that particular, like if you do that, right? So data retention for streaming data sets is typically around 60 minutes. While on the other hand, you have push data sets. Push data sets take a little longer in terms of responsiveness, 3 to 5 seconds, but they retain a lot longer as well. So while you're not getting your data in as fast, it's staying for longer. And so what we're noticing is that there's two scenarios where you're leveraging this data. One is that real-time, perhaps operations or maintenance team sort of scenario. And the other is a business decision maker sort of scenario where you need to look at this data not down to every second, but in aggregation. So over weeks or months, and make decisions on that. And so the question then arises, is there a way that we can get this data into Power BI with the speed of a streaming data set, but allowing you the long-term retention that a push data set does, or even more than that, especially for like IoT scenarios where you have so much data coming in every second? It's quite easy to possibly hit the thresholds that a push data set currently has today. And so that's where we introduce Streaming Dataflows, which is a seamless low-code, no-code experience, which allows citizen analysts to really step in. Automatically under the hood, it's handling both your real-time and historical data scenarios. So it provisions instances, manages the whole pipeline, all of that stuff. At the same time, it also just works out of the box with every Power BI visualization, and we'll see that today. Which enables you to build your Power BI reports as you normally would, but leveraging a lot of the goodness that a streaming data flow provides. And so getting into the technical details a bit, streaming data flow essentially allows a Power BI author to ingest, mash up, model, and build reports based on streaming or real-time data directly in Power BI service. And you can do this through a really friendly low-code, no-code editor. We'll go through that. And effectively under the hood, you're producing a data flow, which can then be consumed and enable a lot of that near real-time reporting. The data flow is also, it supports direct query and APR, which means that we're bringing your data into Power BI, provisioning those like storage spaces, et cetera. And then you're able to use direct query and APR to update your report as frequently as possible as well. And so you can really enable that near real-time or real-time scenario based on your needs. And then And so at a technical level, then what does this look like? And so in Power BI today, with streaming data flows, you can get between 1 to 3.5 seconds in terms of responsiveness. The data retention is now measured in years. You have incredibly good ingestion rates as well. So you're able, and it works with every visualization. So again, it's tapping back into the idea that you're able to leverage both the goodness of a streaming data set and the goodness of a push data set and kind of bring them together with a streaming data flow. And at a high level overview, what does that look like?
So can I pause you right there for a second?
For sure.
I had at least one person in the chat asking if you were sharing, and I'm seeing your screen. Are others, is anybody not seeing the screen? Is there issues there?
Yeah, I see the streaming data flows. Yep.
Okay. Others are saying they're okay. So I think it's just a one-off, hopefully. So hopefully that person be able, maybe it's a different window or something. Sorry to interrupt. Looks like he's coming in again. And okay, yeah, so the streaming data flows, how recently was that released? Did you say that already?
It's in public preview. It's been in public preview since last June.
Great.
I believe. Yeah.
And one person just put, well, maybe I'll hold this question for later. You go ahead and
Sounds good.
get going. Thanks.
No worries. Awesome. Sorry, I think somebody still has their mic on. Okay. Okay, so then what is the high level overview for a streaming data flow today? So we support at EventHub, IoT Hub, and Azure Blob Storage. We're looking to expand support for additional connectors like Twitter, etc. You can easily connect to these on that low-code, no-code UI that we will go through in the demo. And it'll automatically provision both a hot and cold storage for you. And that's what you can then consume pretty easily on Power BI report today. And you can do that through just like, the normal process, right? You get your data, you tap into the connector, etc. And you can manage for change detection through things like APR. So you can constantly monitor the databases for changes as well. And so having said that, we can now go through a demo. Before I do that, though,
yeah, can we go back to that slide? Because I think this is a good spot to ask the question that's in the chat.
Sure.
So the question says, can streaming data flows work with Google Analytics in real time, or is GA restrictive? But based on the slide that you have, I think any source that you could get to feed into one of these 4 things right now is you'll be able to utilize. Would that be correct?
Yeah, because you would essentially just, if you can just pipe that into an EventHub, you're fine. You can then just consume that into a streaming data flow.
So Anthony, I hope that kind of answered your question. I don't know if there's something from Google Analytics that could be streamed into one of these pushed into one of these things, right? Okay, great. That was the only question queued up, and on to a demo. We love demos. Thanks.
Awesome. Great, so just give me a second. Let me get this set up. Great. Can you all see my screen?
Yes. Yeah, we see your workspace. Yep.
Yeah, fantastic. So let's do this. Let's go into, so the way you'd create a streaming data flow is you'd be in a premium capacity. You go to plus new and you would see streaming data flow and you click on that and then you can just enter a name and create one. I've already created a sample one, which we can walk through. So let's say you have a streaming data flow, right? It's right here. This is your low code, no code UI. As you can see, the 3 things here are your connectors. So you can bring in an EventHub, you can bring in IoT Hub or Azure Blob, both a streaming and a reference blob. And once you connect that, you can then do transformations on your data, connect it to an output table, and save it. And then it'll handle the rest for you. So let's bring in let's create an event hub. Let's connect to an event hub, and let's just go through a sample demo right here. The data we're going to look at is from the perspective of, let's say you're a sales engineer at a large e-commerce company, and it's Black Friday. So there's a lot of time cost to this decision. You have to sell a particular product, and you're just trying to consume data, build a report for that use case. So we've already created an event hub. We have that set up. So we're just going to connect to it. And you just do that with an event hub connection string. And so you come in here and you see that there's nothing you can really preview right now. And that's because you first have to detect the fields. So you run auto detect fields, and this will automatically detect all the fields that are out here. And so now you can preview the data. So let's look at this data quickly. So you can see you have the individual product UID, you have the particular product itself. You can look at the SKU, so the type of products, so like black pants, denims, etc. You can look at your distribution center location. This is important for when you're trying to move goods around the country. And you can look at your purchase location. So let's say you're focused on North America, particularly US and Canada. And so this is the data that we have coming in. And let's change SKU to be, that's actually going to be a number, not a string. As you can see, it's been identified. So let's just fix that. Now it's a string. First thing we're going to do, let's filter the fields. So that means that we want to take in only items of one particular type. So let's go through the field detect and we look at SKU. Let's run that again, since it seems like it thought SKU was still text. And it's a great thing to check for always. So you go here, you make sure SKU, we needed to save it. So when we have int here, and then that's it. So you look at this again, now it's a number. Now we're going to take filter, going to take that in, and we're going to look at SKU that's of a particular number type. So let's quickly look at the data again. So what are the SKUs that we had? Looks like it goes from 1 through 5. So let's just take everything off like type 1. Let's put 0, 1 here, and everything of this value will now be filtered in. And now we want to manage fields. So while filter lets you take data off like everything that matches a particular value, manage fields lets you manage based on columns. So as you see here, you have product UID, product group, SKU, etc. And so now we can effectively say, hey, we want all of these columns, or we want just 1 or 2 of these columns. For now, let's connect it to our filter, and let's just add all fields. So we're getting all the data that exists. And so next, what we need to do is we're done doing our transformations. Now what we want to do is we want to save this data. We want to output it to some storage and then save this. So let's create an output table. Let's connect it here. And now you can see this, the whole loop is now complete, and we just need to give it a name. So let's give it super user demo, and let's hit save. So once you save this, it's now provisioned this. And so what's happening under the hood here, when you connect to an output table, is you're able to, it's automatically setting up both hot and cold storage for you. So through this really simple, easy to use UI experience, you're able to completely set up a pipeline. So we can't really preview this right now. The reason is because we have to get the static preview for this. So let's just click on that. It'll quickly load up. And now you can see that we're managing the fields. We're only getting SKUs of type 1. Things are working as expected. And we've saved it. So again, just want to reiterate, we went through a really simple low-code, no-code UI experience, and we're able to we're able to set up a streaming data flow in minutes, right? Something that might initially take you quite a long time. And so
yeah, so that was really cool to see. One person noticed in the chat that there were error messages that seemed to be coming up. And then all of a sudden you would make other changes and those would go away. Like for a while, filter had an error. And I think once you added the pipeline to manage fields, it went away. So is it safe to assume that until you're fully done, don't worry a whole lot about some of those error messages? Is that
Right.
okay?
Yeah, so you essentially want to connect it, and it explains it. We can go through a quick example here. Let's remove this. You'll see an error message. So what's happening here is it's telling you the particular type, so filter 1, and it's giving you the issue, and then it's explaining the message. So it's missing an output to work with. So it just needs to connect to an output here. So you can just look at those messages, and it'll explain things to you.
Perfect.
Yeah. So
Thank
you go
you.
back and fantastic. And we've saved it already, and then we just hit start and it's running. So we already have a data flow running, and I have a sample report ready. So let's look at what kind of scenarios you can enable with it. So let's open that quickly. And I know this is a lot, so bear with me. What you're able to see here is the report that one can build with that simple data flow that we created earlier. So you have a Black Friday operations monitoring report. Here are the things that matter to you as somebody that owns a particular product, right? Every second is important here. You're running all these sales deals. You're trying to convince people to buy your product, etc. And on this report, what you can see is you're able to use real-time information to track on-hand inventory. How much inventory do you have? Where is it? Which location is it in right now? You're able to see when are the last changes you made to different like products, right? So you don't want to make too many changes at the same time. The other thing you're able to see is sales. Like every transaction is being monitored, and you're able to see what is being purchased, from where it's being purchased, what product type is being purchased. So you're able to track that in real time. You're also able to see in-basket inventory. So let's say you connect it to your e-commerce website. You're now able to see that, hey, how many people currently have this particular product in their shopping cart? So does it make sense now for me to reduce prices, or should I wait a little longer? And these are human decisions at the end of the day. So this kind of information down to every second can be pretty impactful. Another thing that you might want to look at is sales volume. So how is that particular product doing over a period of time on the website? If this flatlines to 0, then there might be a bug on the site. So you need to now alert engineering about this. Personal metrics are important as well. So you might have particular goals, like our sales targets. This person seems to be doing really well because they've sold far above the amount of inventory they should have sold for the day. You can also see how much, like, let's say you have target monetary amounts that you have to earn, and you're able to see if you're meeting those or not. So through a quick dashboard, connected through APR, consuming a streaming data flow, you're able to get a lot of real-time information coming in and able to make a lot of these like minuscule time-based decisions, and not minuscule, but like granular time-based decisions really fast. And that's sort of the scenarios that you're now able to enable through streaming data flow. And so before I end the demo, I just want to quickly pause and check if there's any questions. Kevin, if you can help me out here, that'd be great.
There are two that just came in. The first one is, can streaming data flows be built using premium per user, then consumed by, and then can it get consumed by the pro users?
So you can build one. When you say consume, do you mean in terms of can a pro user now build that in their report? Well, if they have, I believe if they have access to the workspace, then that shouldn't be an issue. But if they don't, then that's a problem.
Yeah, and I think to have access to the workspace, they'd have to be PPU themselves.
Yeah.
Typically, anything that's on premium per user has to be all premium per users. No, can they see the dashboards that maintained? Yeah, I would think not, Pedro, if you want to come off and have a little deeper discussion. Normally, everything licensed through PPU means everything must be with PPU. If you put it on the premium capacity like a P1 that you pay the bigger bucks for, then you could have it open to more people in your organization.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, my question was really around not investing in too many premium per user licenses for a small organization that's mostly made up of pro users. So I was wondering, can one user, such as myself, build a streaming data flow and then share those reports and dashboards that are maintained by those data flows to those pro users? So I guess the answer is no, right?
If you're publishing this and they're consuming it on service, then that's fine. But if you're sharing like the PBIX file and then and then they have to run let's say Power BI desktop, then I think there might be authentication issues there.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So just to be clear, you think that the streaming data flow would be in the PPU workspace and you would put the report in a pro shared workspace and you think it will work?
That's what I had in mind.
Oh, yeah. So no, I don't think that would work just because we don't have cross workspace data flow consumption, or at least for streaming. So yeah, it would be, you'd have to publish it and they'd be able to view it within that workspace. So I'm sorry, I don't think it would work in that scenario.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. But great. So, and then going from that, I just want to quickly highlight
So there was one more question, if we could try to get to it while we're on the break. Sure. How can we understand what the EventHub is? Where does the data come from and how to build it?
Sure. So this is not something that you necessarily have to build. It's just the Azure EventHub. And so if you look that up quickly, like you'd be able to just like see, it's, I don't necessarily know the best way to describe it, but it's essentially just consuming events and then publishing the fact that events have been consumed. And so it really works for IoT scenarios or real-time scenarios where you have these like messages that are like coming in at every moment, and you're able to now create a centralized way of like consuming these messages. So instead of having to look at every individual IoT device that's out there on the field that's like emitting all these instances, you just have like a centralized hub where everything is coming and then you just consume from that hub.
Yeah. So it sounds like EventHub itself would be like an hour-long presentation to introduce how, how it's used and stuff.
It's I don't think it's that hard, but it would definitely just take a minute. You just need to like read through the documentation there. I've personally built one. It's very there is really good documentation around it, is what I'd say. There's a good community, there's good documentation.
Yeah. So, but just like anything else, it's another Azure service.
Yes.
Right. And so, Fernando, if you want to learn more about it, it's just one of the supported methods from what we saw on that earlier slide that we stopped them on. Does that help, Fernando, or did you have another follow-up? He's typing. Says yes, thanks. All right.
Awesome. So yeah, just another thing I just wanted to highlight was how simple this experience was, where we have this easy to use low code, no code editor that really enables, like, let's say you've created this EventHub, you give it around, people can consume it, do what they want with it, and create really simple and powerful reports through this experience. And that's really just like down to the engineering team. I'm super proud of their work, and this is just a good testament to that. But yeah, so moving on from that to the next steps. So let me just quickly share my deck again. Let me know if you guys can see it. Okay, great. So in terms of the roadmap, what do the next 6 months for streaming data flows look like? Well, that involves one, of course, like we're looking to support more connectors, things like Twitter, etc. We're looking for support for linked entities. So that's the ability to connect data flows to streaming data flows to other streaming data flows, etc. We're going to be looking to support BYOS, so being able to bring your own storage, and then as well as looking to support more transformations. So that's as you saw, filter, manage fields, join, those transformations exist today. What more can we do? What more scenarios can we enable? In terms of next steps, so you can try out streaming data flows today. You can head over to powerbi.com and create your first streaming data flow on a premium workspace. You can check out that documentation. So if you head over to the Power BI docs, you will be able to get a walkthrough of how to set up a streaming data flow. Even if you need to set up an EventHub, I think Azure has great tutorials around that as well. And if you have any feedback, do let us know. through the channels that are available to you. So if you're part of Enterprise Voice, that's fantastic. If you're a part of like any of these user groups as well, that's great too, because then we always look to hear from feedback from the community. And with that, I'd love to give some space to the audience Q&A. I know we had a bit of interactive sessions before, like through this presentation, but this is again just space for everyone to ask questions they might have.
Yeah, that was great. And as we were kind of chatting early on, I was kind of thinking for my one client through the EventHub, I may have a use case coming up down the road, and I'm going to have to keep looking at that. Anybody else have any questions? Do you want to just come off mute and ask your questions or say anything?
Hi, this is Godson. Do I need to turn on my video or no?
No, you're fine.
Okay. So I want to ask this because I'm currently doing a project in the AWS sphere, and most of the talk is using AWS Kinesis for what do you call it, streaming data, while they do have what do you call Power BI on site stuff. Why would they? What is the scenario whereby you need to pick Power BI as your tool to handle streaming data against AWS Kinesis or Kafka with the Hadoop database stuff? You got my question? What's the scenario why you use a? What's the scenarios where when you have to use Power BI to handle your streaming data instead of using the AWS streaming tool like Kinesis or Kafka?
I think if you're looking to bring your data into Power BI, this is assuming that you're already consuming reports within that paradigm, then that's when you're really looking to enable streaming scenarios for that. If you're asking why you should use Power BI versus the AWS alternatives, I think that's an entirely different conversation. And I don't know if I'm the best one to give that talk, but yeah, like it's if you're in an org that's already using Power BI, we're trying to enable this new scenario for you, and trying to see how we can make it work for you. I'm sorry if I can't give the Power BI pitch.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer, right? I mean, I think you're 100% right. You know, I have some people that bring data from AWS. I have also Kafka topics that are set up internally. It's not on AWS, at least I don't think it is, because Kafka doesn't only run on AWS. But you know, if you could design your architecture, and like you said, is if you're already utilizing and unlocking the power of Power BI, you know, why would you know, I'd reverse the question, why should you introduce a different platform, right? I think the challenge with all architecture is just saying, what do you have and how do you connect it through? So, you know, right now with what he showed us, if you could go back to that slide, the four things that you could bring in, if you could get it to connect through with one of those four things, then by all means keep it in Power, you know, use Power. Yeah, there it is. You use Power BI. I don't think there's native connectors got into those other items that you've talked about. Does that help?
I think the Kafka is loading to a different data warehouse or something like that before it's being consumed in the reports, but not directly AWS. But I know AWS is using Kinesis. That's the one that they're using to handle their streaming data. So,
yeah, and that's a possibility, because we're looking at taking what's in our Kafka topics and putting it into a lakehouse, and then from that lakehouse, if we decide whatever technology, Synapse or something, then we could use that to consume it into Power BI, or a lot of people use Databricks, but that doesn't cover the streaming flow that we're talking about here. So great. I'm glad we could help you a little bit there. Is there?
thank you.
Yeah, Any other questions?
This is Michelle. If none of our other members have a question, the project that I'm working on now, as all of my projects are, involve taking streaming data from Salesforce. So I connect to Salesforce reports or Salesforce objects, and I create a data flow. Right now I'm taking it to my desktop just to kind of build it out there and then publishing it back to the service. But I have to remind people, hey, if you make an update, it's not going to show in the service report that you're seeing because I have to refresh it first. Would I be able to get to a point with this that I could allow them to refresh, and then it would refresh as it's pulling from a Salesforce report and skip me in between?
So are you saying, okay, let me understand that scenario a bit better. People are making changes to what and then requiring you to refresh?
So I publish a report, and then there's a hyperlink in the report that they can jump back to their opportunity in Salesforce, update something, maybe it was in the wrong stage, and they save their object, or they save their opportunity in Salesforce, but until it refreshes again automatically with the data flow, or until I manually say refresh this and republish, they can't see their change in Power BI.
Interesting. So they have to be able to publish it first, and then you're able to consume the change, correct?
Correct. And I'm the publisher. So, you know, if they're a few hours ahead of me, they're waiting around for me to get up and republish their.
That's interesting. So I'm not too familiar with the Salesforce connector, so I'm not sure how that, if there's a way to set it up in a fashion that is automatically just checking for updates when something is published. One way you could possibly look into doing that is, actually, I don't know if it would work there. Like if you wanted to bring it into the streaming paradigm, you really need it to be maybe using some sort of logic app or something that you could set up that's like checking something on an automatic schedule and then piping the event maybe to an EventHub or like Blob or something. Or even just like check for updates and then refresh, like store it in a database, and then you can connect that database to Power BI and then use APR to automatically just check for updates there. Because APR can check for updates, and so you just want to connect it to something that you can then just use APR on top of.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
Krrish, I wanted to just find out, is on that infrastructure that flow that you had shown just now, is where does the real-time data is obviously coming in, but then where does the historic data get saved? Does that get saved in the sort of the
Data lake?
Okay, right. So, and is that then set? Do you set a certain time interval, or is that 60 minutes set all the time? Doesn't matter what you do.
When you say set certain time interval,
So what I'm saying is, can you change that 60 minutes? So, say for example, you want to do it just at a 30-minute, time span, for argument's sake.
You mean windowing the data itself? Like, so you're like, sorry, I don't quite understand.
So
what you mean
basically,
by
what
check? Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that your historic data, so anything older than say 30 minutes becomes historic, and then your real time is 30 minutes and not the 60 minutes that you had sort of talked about earlier.
Yeah, so I do believe you could make these changes on the workspace itself. We do allow some degree of granularity there, so you're able to determine what that split you want it to look like is. I don't know if it allows the. I believe we do between days, but I'm not sure how, in terms of minute granularity, what that looks like. But yes, there is a way to control the retention duration. And so what you can do, because what you can do is you really don't, what you want to control is the hot data, not really the cold data, because the cold data is just storing everything. So yeah, I'm on the site right now. You just go on to settings and you're able to control the retention duration, and you can control it down to every hour. So you can say, hey, we want it down for like just the last hour. The rest of it, like everything is anyways going to be saved in cold storage. We're definitely looking at seeing how we can expand that, etc. But yes, that's what exists today.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great. Any other questions here? And I see you dropped a link in the chat for the question that was for the documentation. So thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, I'd love to ask the question that we were discussing earlier, Kevin, to the rest of the group.
Sure.
Just in terms of, do you, and feel free to respond either by unmuting yourselves or commenting on chat. Do y'all come across a scenario where perhaps people consume your report once and then just don't come back again? Like, do you guys have like, and I'm curious what, if you know the reasons for that, or like if you can help me understand why that's happening. I'm very curious to like just learn more about that scenario where people come once and then don't return to Power BI.
Fernando says no, never, but I kind of know his sense of humor. I have a feeling he's joking a little bit.
This is Michelle. Prior to the BlackBerry acquisition, I worked at Cylance, and at both Cylance and BlackBerry, there was not a critical mass of Power BI users. I was the person going, hey, look at this amazing tool. It's so much better than Excel. Let's use this. And so it was me and a few other people using it. And even at BlackBerry, even though they have the premium capacity, it's hard to find people who are accustomed to using it. It's more of a Salesforce shop and a Tableau CRM shop. So I think that people aren't accustomed to going to it, so they forget to go back to it. That's my input on that.
That's an interesting scenario.
So it's about like change management then. Like people forget that there's like something to go tap into.
Correct. So I've built a report that this one team is getting accustomed to going to, because they're trying to get off of this very, very manual Excel spreadsheet. And I think this is really going to be a great solution for them. But it's and all of my friends on the Thursday call are going to gasp when they hear this. It is possible that I am the most experienced Power BI user in BlackBerry.
Woohoo!
That's scary. You guys know that's scary. So, I can't find anybody else to go, hey, can you look at this measure for me? It's not working. Nobody knows what I'm talking about. So there may be some super secret undercover Power BI user group there that I just can't find. But so my point being that my coworkers are not even accustomed to going to Power BI Premium to see these reports that have been built for them. Or maybe they're going and they don't know that they're going. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I think, Krrish, it's interesting. I mean, I work for a consultancy, so a lot of the reports we produce are sort of just they only get produced once a year for the projects, and then people use those reports over the course of 3-4 months of the year. But certainly another client that I'm about to start doing they've just asked us today to actually build some reports for them. I think part of the problem that it is that if the reports are giving out wrong information, then people get turned off from using the report. Or the other side of things is that if the report is not user-friendly, they also get turned off from using the report. So it's not necessarily about the great functionality that it has, it's the report that's been designed by the particular person internally that then either because, like I say, the data is wrong, or it's not a very easy report to navigate.
That's really helpful. I'm gonna just drop this in the comments, but if you'd be open to being contacted for this, like just because I'd love to do a bit more of a deep dive, just feel free to respond, like react to the message, and I'll probably like through Kevin's help, hopefully, I'll like reach out and try to see how we can set up like a one-on-one.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, it'll be interesting to, but yeah, it's certainly interesting when I do talk to a number of clients about stuff. That's for sure.
Okay.
Okay, great. Yeah, if anybody, wants to have a deeper discussion with this, let me know. I'll connect you with them. Otherwise, anything more on the presentation part, or any other questions, answers?
Awesome then. Thank you so much for your time, guys. This was fantastic.
Thank you. Thanks
It was
for,
great.
yeah, thanks for coming by. So I'm going to go ahead and
Coming by.
I'm going to stop the recording. If I can find the button, I'll have to edit that out.